Welcome back to the NWR Virtual Healthcare Conference. Next up, we have Aroa Biosurgery and the CEO, Brian Ward. Aroa is a soft tissue regeneration company which is committed to unlocking regenerative healing for everybody. The company develops, manufactures, sells and distributes medical and surgical products to improve healing in complex wounds and soft tissue reconstruction. Its products are developed from a proprietary Aroa ECM technology platform, which is derived from ovine or sheep forestomach. There's been over 6 million Aroa products used globally in a range of procedures to date, and the distribution is handled both directly into the United States and also via its partner Telebio. Just a reminder on questions. If you have a question in the audience, please feel free to type it in using the Q&A option within Zoom. But without further ado, I'll hand it over to Brian.
Great, thank you, Matt, and thank you to everybody for joining. So I'm going to jump straight into it. Matt's given a good introduction on just a few other things I'll mention. So, we're well established, been listed since 2020, 4 commercial products families that we sell in the US, predominantly into hospitals. All of our products are based on our proprietary Aroa ECM technology, and I'll talk a little bit about that shortly. The total addressable market for that combined portfolio of products in the US at the moment is in excess of $3 billion. We sell through our own direct field team. So we have a field team of 50 sales representatives, and through our commercial partner Telebio, who have licensed from us products for hernia and breast reconstruction. As Matt said, 6 million patient treatments have been provided in the US, most of that being in the US. There's a large body of scientific evidence that sits behind our products, so over 71 peer-reviewed publications. So the technology platform is well established. Most of our focus is in the US, more than 95% of our sales are there, but we do have regulatory approvals in countries outside the US, so 50 other countries, of which we're selling in 15. More recently, we've been working on a new technology platform. So this is our Nevo tissue apposition platform, a platform that we think we can generate several families of products from, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. Overall, we're more than 270 employees, so a team of 80 based in the US. So that's both salespeople, but also support staff, medical staff, logistics. And then the balance of the team based here in Auckland. So that's development, manufacturing, corporate, marketing, regulatory and quality. So what we do is we isolate a very specific layer of tissue from the forestomach of matrix, forestomach of sheep, and we isolate a matrix that we then purify, and we purify that to remove the cells and cell contents from that tissue that the human body would react against, but we conserve the structure of this material and the biology of this material, which is conducive to cells moving into it and generating new tissue. So that material then becomes a building block for our portfolio of products. The most simple product is our Endoform product. This is the product we first commercialized, used in diabetic ulcers and venous ulcers, a simple sheet of the material. We also sell a product called Myriad. That's a more complex product that's engineered to accelerate the migration of cells into it. So it's a multi-layered product used for soft tissue reconstruction. Our Symphony product, this is the same core technology combined with hyaluronic acid. So used for patients that have severely compromised healing, and a good example of that would be diabetic ulcers. And then we have our Overtex range of products. These are the products that are licensed to Telebio. So they incorporate both the Aroa ECM material, but also either permanent or resorbable synthetic fibers that add additional reinforcement to those devices. So that's particularly important in load-bearing applications like hernia and breast recon. The Aroa ECM technology, what we tend to see in the range of products that we have is very similar properties. Each of these devices is engineered for use in a different application and a different surgical site, but the general response, the tissue response is the same. And so we see this rapid filling of these deficits with new tissue, and it's very well vascularized tissue. It's very very high quality tissue. The material is very well tolerated in contaminated fields. So unlike many of the soft tissue reconstruction products, we don't appear to have the same level of complications in terms of infection. So it appears to be reasonably resistant to infection. And we don't see negative inflammatory responses. So while this is a material that is isolated from an animal source, the purification process removes those components that the human body would react against, and our processing technology is very gentle so that we don't damage the material and therefore provoke immune response. There's a lot, and across all of these products, there's a wide body of both preclinical and clinical publications that support these statements. In terms of opportunity in front of the company, so two broad sectors that we're targeting, so complex wounds and soft tissue reconstruction. In the complex wound market, in the outpatient setting, our Symphony and Endoform products are predominantly used for treating diabetic foot ulcers, venous ulcers. So these are very difficult to heal chronic complex wounds. We're also selling in the operating theatre in the hospital. So our Myriad Matrix and Myriad Morsels products are products that are used in surgery for soft tissue reconstruction, where a surgeon has either removed a large amount of tissue and has to patch the patient together, or the patient's been involved in a traumatic accident where that tissue has been lost and the surgeon has to rebuild the tissue. So typically, OR procedures, and with our own direct field team, that's where most of their focus is directed. With our OviTex products, they're sold through TELA Bio. This is a NASDAQ-listed company that licensed these products from us. So they're selling into hernia, predominantly into ventral hernia and complex hernia, but also in breast reconstruction. So this is typically in implant-based breast reconstruction post-mastectomy. In terms of our share of these overall markets, the TAM is in excess of 3 billion. We have a tiny share of this at the moment, but growing really strongly across all these product lines. Just want to talk a little bit of detail in terms of the Myriad products. So this comes in two formats, a sheet format, which is our Myriad Matrix product, and in our powdered or morselized version, which is our Myriad Morsels products. The potential market for Myriad, is large. We think, in excess of $730 million US. When we initially started with this product, we targeted, quite a wide range of different procedures. So procedures in colorectal surgery, procedures in podiatric surgery, in trauma, in plastic surgery. And so over the last 6 months or so, we've been narrowing our focus, having learnt a lot about how these products work, where the best opportunity for these products is. We're becoming much more focused on trauma. And we see this as being a very attractive area due to the value of these patients and the complexity of these patients and performance of our product. We tend to see that rapid growth of tissue, good persistence of our material, and it works very well in combination with negative pressure wound therapy. So we see trauma as increasingly our area of focus, and particularly trauma cases where negative pressure wound therapy is being used at the same time. Symphony is a relatively new product for us. It's, as I said earlier, used in diabetic ulcers and venous ulcers. It's a combination of our Aroa ECM material and hyaluronic acid. These patients are typically very compromised. They have poor blood supply, compromised immune systems, they're very difficult patients to heal. So this product combines the really favourable properties of the Aroa ECM with hyaluronic acid to really stack the odds in favour of the patient being able to heal that wound. And it's relatively early in commercialisation, where we have some quite good case experience with Symphony now, and we're well through running a randomised controlled trial with Symphony, and that will read out at the end of the next financial year. So in terms of the Symphony market, there's two parts to this market. There's the physician's office, where patients are treated, and then there's the hospital outpatient department. So our focus is in the hospital outpatient department. We're focused on the hospitals where we're already selling Myriad, and there's an outpatient department in that hospital. So we think that's a good place to start to build this business. The other thing about the hospital outpatient department is that the payment methodology in that setting is a fixed fee payment, and the incentives to use both a very effective product but a reasonably priced product are balanced in a way that incentivizes the healthcare providers correctly. So I think we're very well positioned in that market, and that's where we're beginning to sell this product. The OviTex products, this is the reinforced bioscaffold. So these are the products that have the combination of the Aroa ECM and the synthetic fibers in hernia, used particularly in hernias where patients have had surgery and the abdominal wall has not healed, and it's separated, and the patients are left with a large hernia in the midline. And some of these can be the separation can be due to poor healing. It can be due to complications like infection or breakdown of the wound. So OviTex is particularly good in these procedures. There's some really nice data that's come out of the Bravo study showing that the rate of complications with OviTex, and particularly the recurrence rates with OviTex, are extremely low. So typically sort of 3% or less than 3%. If you compare that to the standard of care, typically the complication rates can be anywhere between 10 and 30%. So the data is very compelling for OviTex, and we're seeing strong growth with that through televised sales. Similarly, we have a product for breast reconstruction. So this is a combination of Aroa ECM and a resorbable synthetic fiber. This has grown very strongly as well over the last couple of years since this has been launched. The markets for these products are large. So for hernia, in excess of $1.5 billion, for recon in breast surgery, in excess of $400 million. So large opportunities in front of TELA Bio. We have a revenue sharing arrangement with TELA Bio. So for every $100 in sales that they achieve, we receive $27 in revenue. In terms of our clinical research program, most of our effort is focused on Myriad. So we've been running a registry study with Myriad over the last 3 years. We're almost at 300 patients recruited into that registry. We've had a couple of publications come out of that registry. We're now much more focused on publications in trauma. And so we'll see some publications in trauma come out of that registry. We're also setting ourselves up for a pivotal study with Myriad. So that pivotal study will look at the use of Myriad in combination with negative pressure wound therapy versus negative pressure wound therapy alone. So we expect to complete a pilot study for that pivotal study in the next financial year, and then that will carry us through to a full study, which will begin in the following financial year. As I said earlier, Symphony, we have an RCT running for that. Recruitment's gone very well for that. We expect to get the first readout of the data for that in October, and then final final reporting for that in March next year. So, really excited to that study's progressed well, and the readouts will come within the next 12 months. We're also setting ourselves up for a registry study similar to what we did with Myriad with Symphony as well, to gather additional data. Our Nevo product is a product that's a combination of our Aroa ECM implant and a single-use disposable negative pressure pump. That product, we have two components of it cleared, the pump and the catheter. We require the Aroa ECM implant component to be cleared. We're working on a study for that for the FDA. Pilot study sets us up for that. We are a long way through that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at our quarterly report. But that's progressed very well. So we expect with that to progress from that pilot study to a larger pivotal study. So this is just a little slide on the Enivo tissue apposition platform. So as you can see, it's an implant that's put into deep tissue. So typically in a lot of the surgeries we're doing, hernia would be a good example, breast would be another, but also in soft tissue recon, surgeons are separating tissue layers and then doing a repair at the surgical site and then closing up the surgery on their way out. And what they find is that bringing those tissue planes together and holding them together and making sure that fluid doesn't accumulate between those tissue planes is very difficult. And it's quite common to see seromas form at the surgical site, and those seromas then predispose the patient to complications. And those complications can be infection, or they can be breakdown of the surgical site and delayed healing. So this device is designed to allow those tissue layers to be immediately brought into contact together and hold those tissue layers together for a period of 14 days. And then that allows the surgical site to heal very quickly and avoid the complications. So we think there's a large opportunity for this product. There's a large unmet need across a whole range of specialties. The patients that are likely to have this problem are able to be identified on the surgical table before you do the surgery. Certainly the high risk ones are, and so we see this as a prophylactic device for surgeons. Certainly feedback from surgeons is very strong on this, and I think it fits very well with our existing sales team, and it's just as a way that we can continue to build their sales productivity over time. So just in terms of guidance, we amended our guidance back in January. So total revenue guidance for the year is $67 to $70 million. Gross margin 85%, and our normalized EBITDA will be -$1 to $3 million. We expect to transition to profitability and to be cash flow positive in FY25. So Matt, I'm going to pause there and pass it back to you.
No problem. Thanks, Brian, for the presentation. Once again, if anyone in the audience has a question they'd like to ask, please feel free to type it in using the panel within Zoom. Brian, can you firstly just speak to the competitive environment for what you're doing, and if there's been any changes for you in recent times from that perspective?
Yeah, look, I think we the market we're in, there's 2 or 3 competitors within that market. I think we're very well positioned within the market. What's really interesting about our products is that we get fantastic clinical results, but also we save. Our products are considerably less expensive than some of the leading products that are out there. So I think those 2 factors are very compelling, and particularly in the healthcare environment in the US at the moment, where there's a lot of cost pressure on hospitals. you've seen, hospitals struggling to be profitable. I think they are vigilantly looking at ways that they can, increase care, but also manage their costs. So I think we're well placed. We certainly from a efficacy performance perspective, we don't see anything out there that is is threatening. We just see a really good opportunity in front of us to build a substantial business with this technology and portfolio.
Excuse me, on mute. In terms of your sales staff in the US, I mean, what are the most common pieces of feedback that they're getting when they're out in the field, to sort of, I guess, both in terms of pros and cons?
Yeah, from a pro perspective, the thing we consistently hear is the rate of tissue repair, the rate of tissue formation that we get with our products versus other products that the surgeons are used to. And I think that comes through, that's a very common theme. I think the other thing that stands out is the absence of infections with this material as well. So they would probably be the two pros. In terms of cons, I think I guess the biggest challenge is just the time it takes to, with getting through evaluations and going through value committees and getting onto the contracts. I mean, that's sped up quite a bit since COVID times, but that's probably the biggest lag. But I think generally we're not getting a lot of objections. It's more about the time it takes and getting evaluations up and running.
Very good. With those pipeline products such as Enivo, can you speak about the size of the opportunity there and how quickly you think you could scale that once it's in the market?
Yeah, I think the opportunities, we think that's the market for Enivo is in excess of $1 billion. And so we think it's a very large opportunity. In terms of scaling it up, I think it fits very well in, trauma and soft tissue reconstruction with our existing sales team. We think there's opportunities outside of that as well in other specialties, potentially for partnerships as well in areas that we are unlikely to cover in our own right. So we see that, as we get a little bit further down the line with the clearance for this, we see some opportunities to work with some other companies on this as well. So, I think it's depending, I think for ourselves in that soft tissue recon area, I think we can scale up quickly. I think in some of these other areas, it's going to be a little bit more securing partnerships.
Very good. From an investment perspective, I mean, you're at a modest market cap considering the numbers that you're already producing and as you've just mentioned, the sort of strength of the pipeline. Do you think this is attributable to sort of overall market environment for biotech, or is there sort of other feedback that you get in that regard?
Yeah, look, I think definitely the overall capital markets are sort of depressed for small cap. I think we're caught up in that. I think we're probably we're behind in terms of where we wanted to be this year, and some of that has come through from our partner TELA Bio, just adjusting stock levels. We were aiming to double our Myriad business this year. We're not thinking, we've probably under-delivered a little bit there. I think generally we see that as being short term. We see huge growth opportunity in front of the company. So perhaps it's the market conditions, perhaps a little bit of disappointment about the last quarterly numbers. But if you sort of look through that, it doesn't really change our view, certainly internally and from an operational perspective, in terms of how successful we think the company can be over the next 4 or 5 years.
And just a final one, I mean, again, from an investor's perspective and and anyone watching, I mean, looking forward, how should investors sort of monitor your progress? Is it purely, I know the numbers are going to be one thing, is there sort of going to be other operational elements that you'll update on that will it'll sort of give some way of tracking how the company's going?
Yeah, I think sales sales growth is really important. I think for us, we're focused on strong top line growth. So certainly in excess of 30%. We transitioning to being profitable in the next financial year. So we see ourselves delivering good EBITDA number in the next financial year, and becoming cash flow positive. So I think those are kind of key metrics. From other milestones, I think the Symphony study this year, that's important. I think clearance for Enivo. Now, we're still working through that with the FDA. We may be able to achieve that within the next year. We're looking at that really closely at the moment. I think that's potentially transformational for the company. Adding additional salespeople through the course of the year. Again, adding to that sales momentum. So I think there's a number of things out there that will kind of give signals of success.
Very good. Well, Brian, thanks for the presentation today, and looking forward to seeing those milestones and numbers come through over the next 12 months, and we'll all be watching.
Great, thanks, Matt. Really enjoyed presenting, and thank you to everybody for being on the line. Thank you.
Thanks, and we'll be back with the next presentation in about 10 minutes.